But the big game is Sunday night, and that is the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, two of, I think, what's generally regarded as the top three teams in the NFC this year. The Niners, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. Niners have eliminated the Cowboys the last 2 years in the playoffs. And so this is a big game. I think it's bigger for the Cowboys. I think it's big. Both teams obviously want to win it, but I would argue it's bigger for the Cowboys. Where you at on that?
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers have nothing to prove tomorrow, Sunday, I mean. Right. It is about the Cowboys. They're the ones trying to come up, if you will, Chris. So it's up to them.
Yeah, they want to exercise some demons, so to speak, right? You don't want to enter the playoffs having lost now 3 times in a row to the 49ers, twice in the playoffs the last 2 years, and then Sunday night, you don't want to go into the playoffs facing them, knowing that they've beat you the last 3 times and they've handled you. You got that in the back of your mind. Nor do you want to go in there feeling like, man, let's hope somebody else beats them. I'm not saying if the Cowboys lose, their season's over, that their chances of going to the Super Bowl are over, but they want to get this win.
Right. No, that's right. It's too early. You can't say that, right?
No. And, every game is its own entity, so to speak. But they definitely understand the importance of this game, and they've talked about that. And there's a lot of different matchups people are talking about. We didn't think we'd be here a year ago, but one of the big ones is which quarterback do you trust more, Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott? And then some people will talk about the coaches as well. Mike McCarthy has won the Super Bowl back in 2011 or 2010 season with the Green Bay Packers. And Kyle Shanahan is really a celebrated coach for San Francisco. Has taken them to the Super Bowl but hasn't won it. Obviously, in a Super Bowl with Atlanta as the offensive coordinator, hasn't won it. And so that's another matchup people are talking about.
That's the one I'm interested in.
Yeah, go ahead and expound on that.
Yeah, and when you talk about these two coaches, Chris, you would just on visual, you would look at it and say it's a mismatch. You take Shanahan any day over Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy has, despite the success he's had, people don't look at him the same way. We talk about it all the time with Sean Payton. Chris, his numbers are very similar, but one guy is thought of as the hotness, and the other guy is thought of as an also-ran, even though the numbers are very, very close.
Right.
But in this case, if you were to ask me, in a big game, which guy I'd rather have, it would be Mike McCarthy and not Kyle Shanahan. As great as Kyle Shanahan has been as a regular season coach, and he's piled up the wins, Chris. I can't take that away from him. His offenses have been unbelievable. Look like unstoppable no matter who you put in at quarterback. I'll give him all of that. But when it comes down to winning time, crunch time, making the right calls, getting the first downs and the points you need to seal victories when it matters most, Kyle Shanahan in the big moments has turned to goo, and so has his teams. In the fourth quarter of the 49ers' last 3 playoff losses, Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, NFC Championship games versus the Rams and Eagles, Kyle Shanahan's team has been outscored 37-0. This is fourth quarters, Chris, of games that they were like leading and you thought they were on their way. 37-0. According to ESPN's win probability metric, Shanahan had a 95.3% chance of winning when the 49ers were up 20-10 with 7:26 to go. That was in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Shanahan's Falcons, Chris, as offensive coordinator, had a 99.6% chance of winning when they were up 28-12 with 9 minutes to go. We know how that ended. And then when you look at the records, of course, McCarthy's been in a lot more playoff games, Chris. He has a better he's done a better job. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl. Kyle hasn't. In the regular season, McCarthy 158, 98, and 2. That's 616 winning percentage, Chris. Kyle Shanahan 56 and 46. That's a 549. Good. McCarthy 11 and 10 in the playoffs. Shanahan 6 and 3 in the playoffs. So I get it. Kyle Shanahan has beaten Mike McCarthy the last 2 years. But if I really wanted a big game victory, and I'm talking about when it comes down to soup to nuts and the one that really matters, I would take Mike McCarthy because he's done it. And so far, not only has Kyle Shanahan not done it, Chris, he's failed miserably in those moments.
There is no doubt, and we've talked about it a few times on this show, that Shanahan has fumbled the ball, so to speak, in some of those big moments. You mentioned with San Francisco as the head coach, also what were they, 28-3?
Chris, ridiculous.
In the Super Bowl. Now, he wasn't the head coach in Atlanta, but he was the offensive coordinator, and just no way they should have given up that game, even though Tom Brady obviously played great in the second half. I mean, you got that kind of lead, just run the ball. And
they only
it seems like at times
4 times in the second half. 4 times.
I mean, run out the clock. And even that San Francisco-Kansas City game, they have been running the ball really well.
And then they started throwing.
They stopped, right. So sometimes it seems like he gets too cute. He gets too much into that boy genius,
I'm the smartest guy in the room. Yeah,
reputation that he has. I think with McCarthy, the reason he doesn't get the respect, and he should be a respected coach. He won the Super Bowl. His teams are essentially always in the hunt when he was in Green Bay. And then for the most part, and then with Dallas, he's won 12 games his last 2 years. But, I think people look at it like, man, you only got to one Super Bowl, not even one, just one, but you only got to one with Aaron Rodgers for all those years, and I think people look at that. The defense was a problem a lot of times, but he's the head coach. And so even though he's more of an offensive guy, you're the head coach. You're responsible for everything. Like in Denver now, Vance Joseph is the defensive coordinator, but ultimately 70 points sits at Sean Payton's
That's on his record, Chris. There's no doubt about
absolutely. it. Absolutely. And so I think it's similar with Mike McCarthy. And then, of course, his last few years in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers didn't end well. I mean, it just fizzled. And so people tend to think of him as kind of outdated, like the game has passed him by a little bit. I think he's underrated in that regard because, as you said, his record's similar to Sean Payton's. But I also think, Rob, the way these last 2 playoff games has ended for the Cowboys, that's on Mike McCarthy too. I mean, the poor clock management. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, Dak Prescott doesn't slide. You can blame it on him, but it was like they were chickens with their heads cut off out there, not knowing what to do. And then last year, they run a play with Ezekiel Elliott at center. I mean, it was just, they looked like nonsense. I mean, it's comical the way they've ended these games. So I would not necessarily take McCarthy over Shanahan. Now, I agree, Shanahan's got to get it done in the big moment. He's got to, I don't know what in the world gets in his head in these last or few minutes as some of the Super Bowls you brought up. But I think offensively, that dude is sensational. And it shows in that offense that they have. And, sure, they've got stars. But, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, a lot of those guys, they benefit from the system. They're great players, don't get me wrong. But Christian McCaffrey, who was great in Carolina, but we've never seen him look like this. Like, he looks better than ever. And so I'm going to give Kyle Shanahan some credit for all that. And I think McCarthy's got some serious gaffes on his resume, just as Kyle does. And Kyle's actually, you mentioned Super Bowls. McCarthy's on the been to one, and he won it. But it's been a long time since he got back